Welcome to the inUpowers podcast, where we give a name and a face to emotion. We discuss the real and raw when it comes to mental and emotional health. We are here to teach you that emotions are information and behavior is a choice. We want to help you make safer connections through healthy communication by empowering you to understand what your emotions are telling you. I'm your host, Tami. Let's get started. Welcome to the inUpowers podcast. I'm Tami, your host, and today we're going to talk about fog and pop. But before we do that, we're going to have our moments minute. And have you ever been scared? Or have you gone somewhere and not really been scared, but somebody else was really scared, and as soon as you got into their space and heard their fears, you became just as scared? Yeah, fear is the most contagious of all the emotions. And rational or irrational, or if you do it for adrenaline, like Halloween time, right? It's still very contagious. But it's also not much of anything. It just keeps you from where you're going, or sometimes can protect you. But it's blinding, and it pauses. So today I want to talk about how has your fear blinded you, or how has somebody else's fear blinded you and kept you from going where you wanted to go. And then I want to challenge us to see it from another perspective. Just because you were blinded by fear doesn't mean you can't see it another way. And so that's how we're going to talk about fog and pop today. So fog is fear of growth. And you kind of know my story. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I stood behind the chair for like over 20 years and had the most phenomenal clientele whom I love and still love and treasure the lessons I learned from them. And wanting to do a great job with them, I also was creating these characters so I talk about them to my clients. And actually Pop and Fog came to me from my clientele. And I don't know if it's okay, so I'm just going to use their first names. But Fog, the name, came from Tiffany. I was describing this character that was Fog, like the actual natural phenomenon, and that wore flip-flop sandals that said why, and was paralyzed and just scared of everything and almost cold and chilly. And I'm like, and his name's Fog, but I'm not sure what his name was. And I was explaining the character and a little bit about him. And Tiffany called and says, or actually she was in my chair and she goes, I've been thinking about your characters. I have a couple names. And she said, fear over growth or fear of growth. And I'm like, that's it. It's fear of growth. Fog is fear of growth. It is a lot easier to stay put. It is great to make excuses and never go forward. And complaining about everything but never doing anything about it is a very safe place to live. Have you ever been blinded by your fear? Or has your fear or somebody else's fear blinded you from the future you truly want? Fear is cold. Fog is cold, in fact, bone chilling. And in its most extreme, can create black ice. So it can wipe you completely off your feet. And now, I haven't looked up all the science behind it, so I don't want to get in a lot of trouble, but I was told by a counselor, I'm trying to remember, I had a really awesome clientele. It was a counselor that said anxiety and excitement are the same endorphin in your brain. And courage and stress are the same endorphin in your brain. It's what you choose to do with it. There is a reason we're excited or anxious before we get on a stage. That's scary. And there's a reason why we're walking towards a cliff that the butterflies in your tummy are getting a little nervous because you could fall off of a cliff. Right? There are reasons we are supposed to feel that way. But have you ever exaggerated your fear? Have you made your fear that people are out to get you? Or that one side of a political party is absolutely scary, but your side is right? Or another culture is out to get you? Or a teacher or a boss or a leader, or you have to be the isolated leader. Have you let your unrealistic fears or your mind get so blown out of proportion, you've paralyzed yourself? Have you caught yourself kind of hiding or letting somebody else go first? Have you thought, oh, you know what, this fear deserves a lot of excuses, and my fear is so important, and you don't understand my fear, so you can't understand how hard it is? Or do you find it easier to complain instead of try? That's fog. That's fear of growth. You're blinding your tomorrows. You can't see because it's cloudy and it's cold. Fog, the character, almost did a lot of things. Well, I almost ran for president, and I was almost first place in the Olympics, and I was almost whatever, right? He was almost everything. But he could have done it, but he didn't try, so he didn't fail. Sometimes it's easier to use the excuse of fear, but make excuses than to try and not be as good as you thought you were. Or make judgment calls on other people and almost be a lot of things, but never really take that step and becoming what you're dreaming of being, because safe is just so much safer. When I got the character fog, it was really hard for me. That is like, first of all, in my head, naturally, I don't think I'm awesome. Like, I actually think everybody else is more brilliant, smarter, more talented, all the things than me. I'm pretty confident in some of my skills, like hairdressing and loving people, because I do. I love everyone. I really do. That's so cheesy, but I truly love people. We're brilliant. We just are. We're amazing. And I can see it, and that's what made me a great hairdresser, is because I could see what people could be. But to think I'm awesome and that other people aren't, or that people are stupid because of the way they drive, or because of what they're wearing, or because of what political party they follow, or because of what religion they might be, that is never a thought process in my head. And I know how hard it is to put together a big party, and I know how hard it is to run a business, and I know how hard it is to do, like, to step out, right? So when anybody else is doing it and it's not me, I don't judge it, because I didn't do it. I'm like, yay, it wasn't me. And I mean, if corrections need to be made, of course I do that. I'm a leader. I'm not like blind, but at the same time, my thought process is never like, oh, they're stupid and I'm great. That is never, ever the way I think. But I heard it a lot behind the chair, and I heard it a lot with my family and friends and just my life, like, oh, these people are stupid, and these people are stupid, and these people are stupid. Says who? Says you. But that's because you just haven't learned them. And it's easier to be paralyzed by your fear than it is to actually do the work to find out what it could really be. That's why we're going to talk about POP. POP, progress over perfection. This is another client that gave me the name. I was telling him I have this great brain. He's full of wisdom and courage, and he has a bad left knee. I have a bad left knee. There's kind of some similarities there. And he wears glasses. Well, I have a broken brain, and if you've heard any of my past and before, I have epilepsy and was supposed to have brain surgery, lots of different things in my life. And so I've always had a broken brain. So I knew that POP had to be a broken brain, but one that kept trying. And I was telling my clientele about it, and Josh was awesome. He actually got it right away, called me, and just told my stylist, it's really quick, I just have to tell Tami, I know the name of her brain. And they're like, what? And so they gave me the phone, and Josh goes, I know his name, it's POP. And absolutely his name's POP, and it's progress over perfection. Absolutely. A brain that treasures progress and will continue to keep trying and to continue to keep going, even though he's broken, so that he can have the life he wants. And I'm super grateful for my clientele, like I said, Tiffany, who helped me get FOG, fear of growth, and Josh, who helped me get POP, progress over perfection. And POP is amazing. He's a brain full of wisdom and courage. But wisdom doesn't come from having an easy life. Wisdom doesn't come from staying paralyzed by your fear. Wisdom doesn't come because you just showed up. Wisdom comes from trying, falling down, and getting up again. Wisdom comes from learning the lessons of the hard and Progress over perfection. It doesn't have to look perfect. It has to look like trying. Fog will keep you paralyzed. Pop will get you going. One of his goals is his glasses. And if you've seen the characters, I've looked it up online, inUpowers.com, you can see Pop in his special glasses. And his glasses look pretty different because they're supposed to look like a P and then on one side and a D on the other side. And if we were to put two people looking at the same piece of paper on the ground and facing each other, one person would see a P if they were looking at the letter on the ground, and the other person would see a D if they were looking at the letter on the ground. And they would both be looking at it from a different perspective, but they would have completely different letters, but they would be the same air, the same life, they would be in the same room, everything would be the same, even the same paper, but they would see something totally different, a lowercase d and a capital P, which means we need to find courage to see things another way. We call it perspective discernment glasses. It takes a lot of courage. It takes you stepping through your fog and through your fear to get to the other side, to see it someone else's way. Your way is totally right for you, but doesn't make it the only right way. And your perspective isn't the only perspective in the room. Every human, every one of us, has a perspective that's unique to ourselves. And it takes a lot of courage to ask somebody, hey, can you show me it your way? Or can you teach me? And it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and say, here, let me show you what I know. Here, why don't you try with me? Or here, this is why I feel this way about this specific subject. In our country, it's the political time, and it's very unsettling and very divisive. In fact, I'm amazed at the last decade and a half of how divisive and how divided we are. None of us are wrong. We have our reasons for the way we see things. But none of us are perfectly right. And if we truly want to get along, and we want to be better as a human family, we need to start trying to see it another way. We need to recognize that their truth is just as valuable as yours. And their ideas are just as valuable as yours. And your ideas and your perspective and your life is what you're creating. But if you are letting fear and division and frustration and doubt guide you, where are you going? You're probably staying stuck. It's probably easier to just hide. And for sure, it's less embarrassing if you never try. But what fun is that? Pop is happy to laugh at himself. If I'm trying to do something I've never done before, I tell the world. In fact, you will hear me make a lot of mistakes in this chair and interviewing people. And I don't say everything perfect. And I don't deem to be anything but the inUpowers creator and a believer in you. But other than that, I'm just like you. I have opinions. I'm trying. And I'm definitely not perfect. You can ask any one of my family members or friends. If you're always looking why somebody's hurting you, or you're always looking out to see why you need to protect yourself, or what's coming out to get you, or whatever you're looking to focus on or be stressed out or scared of, you're going to find it. But if you're willing to try and to be taught and to share your world, we can all have a little more progress over perfection and be a little bit more like Pop and have the courage to see it another way. Please, don't be blinded by your fear. See it, call it what it is. In fact, when we had the counselors and teachers and we were doing all the studying on all the emotions, the fear is one of the fastest ones once you've labeled it in your brain for your neuron receptors to help you calm down. And it's also one that can be the most contagious, and other people can example your fear. Fear used to be a great motivator in the beauty industry. If you don't look like this, then you won't have this. If you don't have this, you won't have that. Like the industries have worked a lot with our fear. But fear is what you make it. Fear is what the energy you put behind it. I'm going to invite you to see the world a little more clearly. To label something that you're truly scared of, or people you're scared of, or an idea you're scared of, or things that you might be scared of, and ask to see it another way. And see how much progress you might be making, and how much you might have a pop moment yourself. Remember, emotions are information, behavior is a choice, and you are brilliantly made to be great. Talk to you next Monday. Bye. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the inUpowers podcast. We are grateful you are here. Please share this podcast with those you know who might need it, and follow and rate us so we can continue providing this podcast to you. Follow us on social media to see more visuals about the inUpowers, and join us next week for another episode. Until then, remember, the power to choose is in you.